Welcome to the Apiary. This is Jake B-Man with Golden Fox Farms. This is one of the most important times of year for me, mid-February, both because it's Valentine's Day, but also this is the time of year I need to get my equipment needs figured out and get the equipment ordered before I need it. Now I realize my equipment need might be bigger than your own. That's okay. These same principles work whether we're talking about a 2-hive apiary or a 2,000 hive operation. You just need to evaluate what your needs will be. I recall my first high survival year, and what they don't tell you is if all your bees survive winter, you're going to have way too many bees in the spring. And part of that was in my area, I was one of the first beekeepers in modern times to have high survival. And the knowledge base for what to do beyond splits for swarm control had sunset into the past. I didn't understand what my surviving colonies would try to do, and that is triple themselves, and I had nowhere near enough equipment or management skill to contain them, and I ran out of equipment several times. Running out of equipment is handily one of the most brain-frying experiences you can have as a beekeeper. Your bees are bursting, and your options are either drop everything and make a panicked, unbudgeted trip to the bee supply store, or watch your bees take flight into the distance. If you do make the panic trip to the store, you might be very unpleasantly surprised by what they do and don't have in stock. I recall an emergency trip that year, and I went to one of our regional suppliers and I literally bought everything on the floor. The 20 unassembled deeps that were forgotten in back and the assortment of tops and bottoms they had. And I was on my own for frames and foundation. That was all they had. As such, I can say figuring out your equipment needs early and getting them addressed is a surefire way to simplify the beekeeping year ahead. It is also nice to build in some flexibility for handling those problems, and that is facilitated by having more than minimum amounts of equipment on standby. Fundamental to this is understanding what your apiary needs will be this spring. This is primarily driven by what you have available equipment-wise in storage and your survival rate, but is also driven by how you winter colonies versus how you manage them during the flow, and your expectations regarding nuke sales, honey production, and swarming.
Let's start by examining survival.
If you have significant mortality, congratulations on all that freed up equipment. And your spring management becomes much simpler. It's just the formula of splitting hives into deadouts. Your equipment needs are minimized, your management needs are simplified. Good luck with the year ahead. I can tell you this apiary has 98% survival as of today. And getting 2% of my in-use equipment freed up by mortality is not nearly enough for what the spring is going to do to me. Add on that this is one of several yards, and I can expect similar survivability in those yards, and I can find myself in real trouble. Uh, I'm going to be wholly reliant on the equipment I have stored, including what I order in now, so I have things available when bees start moving. This lands us on stored equipment. It is time to do an inventory. Figure out what you have. This is my own scribbled up sheet of my own inventory. And there's a couple of things that are conspicuous to me when I look at it, because you often end up with unbalanced equipment stocks. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at my 10 frame equipment. I have 25 deeps in storage, along with 29 inner covers, 35 tops, and 7 bottom boards. So I can tell you right now, since I primarily put new colonies in single deeps, I am way short on bottom boards to be able to maximize the 10 frame equipment I have in storage. So I definitely need more bottom boards. We see similar with my 5 frame equipment. If I decide to use them as singles for nuke size splits or queen rearing, my 24 bottoms and 26 boxes will facilitate 24 colonies, but I only have 15 tops and only 1 inner cover to spare. If I want to maximize the number of 5 frame singles available while minimizing equipment expenses, I should be getting 9 tops and 23 inners. However, this isn't the whole story. We still need to talk wintering versus summering arrangements and the impacts of nuke sales, honey production, and swarm expectations. Let's dive into wintering versus summering arrangements. This yard has a bunch of multi-story hives, 10 frame and 5 frame. That's because I find wintering in doubles preferable. With a 10 frame single in this area, you're pretty close to plugging that single out, getting it up to weight. So I just find it easier to switch to double deeps where practical. We'll take singles into winter, it's just a little bit more difficult. Doubles also give me the flexibility to do reverses and maximize how long I can keep colonies intact before I have to start pulling out bees, or doing more extreme acts of swarm control. However, once we're on the cusp of the flow, I find single brood box management superior as it maximizes production and reduces the number of 10 frame deeps I need per brood nest. If I did that as splits, I would need a spare set of bottoms and tops for each surviving double colony, but I also don't have the stand space for that, so nor do I really want to increase my numbers any higher. So what can I do? I can split vertically. I can run multi-queen systems, and that reduces the amount of new bottom boards and tops I would need because these things will get separated going this way. We also have comparable considerations for the 5-frame equipment in use. There are a number of 3-story 5-frame colonies. That's actually a 4-story one there because it was a late combine. If anything, these colonies will largely stay the same or be reduced down into doubles and singles depending on my needs or my goals at that time. Am I making nukes? Am I trying to get comb drawn? Am I trying to get queens mated? And that will ultimately determine what happens with those boxes. So that will free up some number of 5-frame boxes, which further emphasizes the need for me to get more 5-frame tops and bottoms together so I can maximize the use of that equipment. The last variables are nuke production and honey production and swarm expectations. The first two are simpler to figure out. Honey production is simple math. Figure out how many colonies you expect to take into honey production, multiplied by the number of supers they will need, and that is your super demand. I target placing 3 supers on hives going into production. That gives me time to identify the boomer hives and the stalling hives, and I can steal supers from the stalling hives and put them on the boomers, while I concurrently address whatever has gone wrong in the stalling hive. Also remember you can pull capped frames at any time, capped honey frames, and you can spin them, extract them, and then put them back in the colony. So you ultimately have more flexibility meeting super needs on the fly than you do with a lot of the other equipment challenges in beekeeping. Do you recall you can run supers with 9 or even 8 frames drawn, which also stretches your equipment dollar. That is another $4 per super in deleted equipment, which adds up. I also park a super with undrawn frames on top of my swarm colonies, as I never have enough drawn super comb, and swarms are the best comb building tool in the apiary. With nukes, we also have some pretty simple math. For each nuke scheduled to head out the door, you know you're losing that much equipment. Now, let's say I have 20 nuke sales booked. I know that means 100 frames are heading out the door that I will need to replace. That also means gesture boxes or wood nuke kits or whatever you send those nukes out with. I myself have a pile of gesture boxes, so that's not a concern for me this year. Lastly is your swarming expectations. This can be the most difficult one to gauge. 2020 and 2023 both earned the badge of Swarmageddon due to unrelenting swarming some beekeepers experienced. Swarm control can stall swarming, but you eventually enter a stage where you need to get bees out of the colony. Now, that said, you need to estimate what your swarm equipment demands will be, and that's best gauged using your survival. Surviving bees, surviving colonies will try to triple themselves. And it's up to you where those bees are going to end up going. If it's vertical splits that take a lot of bees, or if it's pulling nukes out that take a lot of bees, or if it's swarming that takes a lot of bees. I'm hopeful with nukes and splits and everything else, I can keep it under 20 swarms captured between my apiary and calls that I get. And that's a pretty low number considering 100 colonies. That is pretty minimal amounts of swarming, but it's still going to happen. As such, I'll need kit for 20 deeps, 20 supers, and 20 tops and bottoms. I could accommodate some of that in 5-frame, some of that spillover in 5-frame equipment, but that also illustrates the need to get more of the 5-frame equipment lined up. Now, with all of these questions addressed, it is time to consolidate all of this information and identify the choke points in my equipment supplies. Let's figure out what our equipment needs are first, and then see what the equipment we have available is. So let's start by saying I'm going to have 10 colonies going into honey production. I'm going to have 20 colonies that are swarms that I boxed this year. And I'm going to have 20 nucleus colonies going out the door. For the 20 nucleus colonies, it's going to be those 20 colonies times 5 deep frames per colony. So I have 100 deep frames needed for that. Since I know I need 100 deep frames, I can make a master list that has the actual equipment needs on it. So deep frames, I know I need 100 for the nukes. The honey production colonies are a bit more straightforward. For them, I really just need mediums in frames. So for each one of these, I'm going to have 3 medium boxes and 30 medium frames. Well, times that by 10, that's 30 medium boxes and 300 frames. So let's consolidate that to the equipment list. Medium boxes, I need 30 there. And medium frames, I need 300 there. Now the swarms are far more complicated to figure out because there's just so much more equipment on them. For each swarm, I'm going to be using a medium box and 10 medium frames, and 1 deep box and 10 deep frames, and a bottom board and a top. Okay, so that means 20 medium boxes, 200 medium frames, 20 deep boxes, 200 deep frames, 20 bottom boards, and 20 tops. And we consolidate that back again to the other list. So, just working down from this, that's another 20 medium boxes and another 200 medium frames. And I'm going to need deep boxes and deep frames for the swarms. That's going to be 20 deep boxes and 200 deep frames. I also need 10 frame bottom boards and 10 frame tops. 20 and 20. And then we can calculate up what we need. Now, one thing I left off, if I wanted to fill up those nuke boxes that I have with frames or any of the spare equipment, I'm going to need some more deep frames than I actually have listed here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add 200 to that because I can never have too many deep frames. And then we just calculate it all out. So I need 50 medium boxes, 500 medium frames, 20 deep boxes, 400 deep frames, 20 bottom boards, and 20 tops. So how does this compare to what I have in stock currently? Well, what I have in stock currently on these equipment points, on medium boxes and medium frames, I've got more than that already, so I don't even need to worry about those. Deep boxes, I have 25 of them, so I don't need to worry about that. Deep frames, I'm actually a bit short on this. I have about 200 stored, so I need about 200 more. For the 10 frame bottom boards, I only have 7, so I'm 13 short there, so I need 13 more of those at a minimum. And on the 10 frame tops, I need 20, and I have that, so I don't need any more of those. So what do I buy? In the 10 frames, I have the sequential choke points of 7 bottoms, 25 boxes, 29 inners, and 35 tops. In this case, if I buy 22 more bottom boards, I'd have 29 bottom boards. I expect the number of boxes to go up with my change into summertime management, so that's not going to be a choke point anymore, so I don't even need to worry about that. So that way, I maximize the number of colonies I can set up as 10 frame singles to 29 by just buying 22 inner covers. Those inner covers are roughly $10 a pop. I don't want to not be able to box a swarm because I'm missing a $10 piece of equipment. 5 frame has a similar tail. I've got that one inner cover. That's definitely the choke point. 15 tops and then 24 bottoms and 26 boxes. If I got 24 more inner covers and 9 more tops, that lets me increase my 5 frame capacity by 24 colonies at the cost of about $16 per colony. So that's a pretty decent return. Lastly is the frames. I have a couple hundred frames in storage, so I need to order a couple hundred more in. I usually just buy frames by the 100 count lot because there usually is a discount involved. And frankly, if you're in beekeeping for any extended period of time, you're going to be needing frames forever. And that's something you don't really need to worry about having too many of. With this, I hope we have clarified figuring out your own equipment needs for the spring. Good luck and happy beaking.